Let's talk about the fickle game of trying to find that perfect winger. When do you back the talent? This is inspired by the selection of Emmanuel Faye-Weboso for England and Lewis Liner for Italy, two really interesting selections. Faye-Weboso wasn't trusted for the Italy game or the Wales game or the Scotland game, but is trusted to play against the best team in the world, which is quite interesting. And Lewis Liner wasn't trusted enough by England to get a cap, but Italy has said thank you very much and snapped him straight up. So let's talk about wingers. When do you back them? When do you back speed? Or when do you back off? When do you say their game isn't all round, or when do you work with them? That's what we're talking about. I'm going to have a little chat about it now, and I'd love to know your experiences. Which characteristics are the most important? When do you back a player? When do you say a certain area isn't good enough? As an England fan, we've seen a number of talented wingers tried but not really stuck with. Is that the right decision? We saw Ollie Hassel-Collins being given a few caps, didn't really get on the ball, didn't get involved in the game, and he was gone. Joe Thokanasiga, we know, is big, he's strong, but are his skills, his defence good enough, and he hasn't been picked for this campaign. When Adam Radwan got his chance for England, he looked phenomenal, but we know his all-round game isn't quite there yet, but they didn't stick with him. And Lewis Liner, yes, was never given a cap, and now he's gone to Italy. So should they have stuck with some of these players? Just in general, should you stick with wingers and work with their rough edges, or do you look for that perfect winger straight away? Now, of course, this sort of selection is a bit of an art, not a science, but which of the characteristics should you prioritise most in a back three, in a winger? Is it that ability to beat players, that raw speed, that footwork, the step? Is it the offloading out of the tackle, or the high ball or kicking ability, or that ability to come off the blind and link with some passes? Work as an extra forward in and around the ruck can be very useful. We've seen that with players like Mark Talea in the World Cup. Can they be relied on to secure rucks if you're spreading out your attacking system? Now, all these things you'd have to consider, but which ones would you say, okay, we'll accept that deficiency and work with it? Now, I can relate to this a little bit as a winger. I was lucky enough to get a trial for Bath Under-19s. I got in, I played a full season, but I was never going to be a professional. My skills weren't far advanced enough. I definitely wasn't quick enough at that level. I could defend, I wouldn't miss a tackle, I was reliable. But when it came to the final of, I think it was the Premiership Cup when we played Gloucester, I was dropped for that game. They brought in a guy who could actually kick goals actually. I was given the kit and stuff, the suit, and stood there watching with a couple of other players who were dropped for that game. It was fair enough in retrospect, although you feel a little bit disappointed at the time. But I was watching the game, and Gloucester started two wingers who went on to become professional wingers. I won't name the one who didn't have a good game, but the one who had a great game was James Simpson-Daniel. He was so skillful, they played him at fly half for that game. His passing was great, and he beat so many men with his step and his pace. He was awesome, part of the reason why Gloucester won that match. The other winger, like I said, I won't name, but every time he got the ball, he dropped it cold, just really bad drops. He was crazy quick and explosive, just an illustration that those skills are important. It's not just pace and power, as we know. But sometimes it is worth a coach taking a punt and working with that player, giving them plenty of caps to see if they can get up to the right level. We saw Eddie Jones. He was looking for extreme pace. He saw it in Johnny May, and he gave him a chance, and he developed into a fine winger in all aspects of the game. To start with, he was quick, but he was a headless chicken, and indeed I think he thought he was a chicken for a while, so was the story. His catching was a bit dodgy, had really wide elbows, and still did at the end, but he managed to refine that, and in the end he was a fantastic kick chaser, and ironically, in the World Cup just gone, he was selected as a kick chaser when he wasn't one of the quickest guys at the World Cup. So interesting how he went from one extreme to the other. England, of course, backed Chris Ashton, who was the arch finisher. He would follow players and get the offload and score loads of tries, but he wasn't a thinking machine, he wasn't a rugby genius, but they backed him and he scored a lot of tries. You could also talk about Jason Robinson, who was brought from Rugby League. He didn't know how to ruck, he didn't have a kicking game, but they stuck with him and he learnt really, really quickly and became one of England's great wingers. George North, Lewis Rees-Zammit, they started for Wales very, very young, very raw, but they stuck with them and they became fine players. Lewis Rees-Zammit, maybe we'll never know. Maybe he will come back to rugby union, I don't know. North has obviously gone on and had a fantastic career for Wales, for the Lions, and he's transitioned into 13 as he's got a little bit slower, using his power and his skills that he's developed. So that's a great story of sticking with a player. If Wales hadn't stuck with Shane Williams, would he have got that amazing step, all those great tries when people were saying maybe he's too small? James Lowe, a bit more of a modern winger. He made a lot of mistakes early on for Ireland, but they stuck with him because they wanted that left boot, they wanted that power, that pace, and that's paid off. And maybe even the ultimate example, Jonah Lomu, he wasn't in there for his skills particularly, but goodness me, his power, his pace was unbelievable. Now, some players made it to international, but their skills just held them back from getting more and more caps. Ugo Monye is a good example, although later on in his Harlequins career, his high ball, his kicking was fantastic, but his pace wasn't quite there. Didn't quite have it early in his career, although he did get a number of caps. A bit like Ian Bullshaw, he was always England's quickest winger in that 2003 era, but didn't get the starts because they didn't trust his all-round game. Christian Wade's another good example, got a few England caps, but they didn't trust his defence in particular. For Wales, Alex Cuthbert was selected by Gatland as a big, quick winger, but his positioning often caught him out, and certainly Welsh fans didn't like that. Jacob Stockdale for Ireland was going to be the next big thing, but then just a few mistakes, not reliable enough, and he's now out of the team. Will he ever get back in it? And the ultimate example of backing the wrong horse just for their physicality is probably poor Mauro Bergamasco, the excellent flanker for Italy, who was disastrously played at scrum half, of course, but was also tried on the wing, where he wasn't anywhere near as effective as he was as a flanker. And sometimes coaches get lucky. They get a player who is just good at everything. One of those perfect wingers, perfect back three. Who are the ones that I've seen where I would say, for New Zealand, Ben Smith, I've always said, is the best winger I've ever seen. He had no weakness. He was always in the right place at the right time. He could finish with the best of them. Very similar to Will Jordan of New Zealand. If he can get over his injuries, he could be the new Ben Smith. I don't see a weakness in his game. Growing up, I thought Joe Roth, Chris Latham of Australia were amazing back threes. I couldn't see a weakness there. Maybe Josh Lucy was that all-rounder for England. For Wales, Liam Williams could play on the wing and fullback. Didn't really have a weakness, always did the right thing. Damien Penaud for France maybe. You can put other examples, but sometimes you get a player who is almost undroppable. They're almost perfect, but often you just have to back their ability that they've got and work on their weaknesses. So the question is, when coaches don't get that perfect winger, which innate qualities do they back and they say, I'm going to work on the rest? And Emmanuel Faye-Wabosu and Lewis Liner, do I think they're going to do well? Well, yes, I do. I actually think they've got good all-round games. I don't see massive weaknesses in their game, so I think they've got a great chance of becoming top players. I think they are worth sticking with, but let me know the ones that got away, the players, the wingers, that coaches should have stuck with. Pop your examples below. I'd love to know them, and I'll catch you next time.